Good morning, everybody. This presentation is going to be on Chinese forms of address. My name is Amy, and the other people in my group are Jonathan, Emily, and Darren. So we're going to start with the Did You Know questions. The first question, what general forms of address are in Chinese? It's considered proper when talking with an adult stranger to use 先生, which means Mr. for a man, and 小姐, and that means miss for a woman. For women who are a little older or middle-aged, people would use 大姐 or 大嫂, which means elder sister. And for addressing older women, people would use 伯母, which means aunt. And the second question, when should you use a person's professional title? Professional titles are preferred in professional situations, such as business communications and government affairs. And to address them, you would start with their surname followed by their profession. For example, 李老师, which means teacher Li. The third question, how to address a person who is much older than you? If you are familiar with the person, you would start with their surname followed by 伯伯 or 叔叔, which is uncle, or their surname plus 伯母 or 阿姨, and that means aunt. If you're not familiar with the person, a simple address of 伯伯 or 阿姨 would be safe. And the final question, if 您 should be used between friends. People are offended when using 您, especially when seeking help from an adult stranger. However, addressing a friend this way gives a hint of distance, irony, or sneering.
Forms of address. In this section, we will be going over addressing according to 3 types of identifications: general addressing, addressing in the workplace, and addressing those in the service industry. First, we will be going over general addressing. This is how we would speak to individuals in a general setting. When addressing someone in a normal setting, we would use their surname or full name followed by their title. This is suitable for both casual and formal greetings. For example, if we want to speak to our manager, we can say 吴训理, and if we are speaking to our teacher, we could say 祝老师. Addressing in the workplace. When talking to other individuals in the workplace, their surname will be preceded by an informal title, either 老 or 小 to indicate age. For example, 老后 and 小时. When referring to a boss or executive in the workplace, we take their last name and follow it with 荣. For example, we can refer to someone as 王总 and 巨雄. Finally, there's addressing those in the service industry. When addressing a waiter or a waitress, we can say 服务员. When addressing a delivery driver, we say 快递小哥. And finally, for food delivery drivers, we can refer to them as 外卖小哥.
In Western cultures, we reserve professional titles for professional settings as well. For example, when we refer to a professor, we would call them Professor blank, where blank is their name. And if we're in a doctor's office, we might call a doctor just doctor, or we might call them doctor and their name. And in everyday situations, we are generally a lot more casual. The most formal we might get would be referring to strangers or teachers, where for teachers, we would call them Mr. or Mrs. or Miss, depending on their gender and marital status. And for service people, we generally just greet them with a hello, how are you, and do our business with them as we needed. And for family, we might call our sisters and brothers by their first names and our parents by, well, mom and dad And then for extended family, we might call them what they are. For example, uncles, we just say uncle, and maybe their first name. We can also say sir or ma'am when we're referring to strangers, but this is fairly uncommon. And Eastern cultures, like South Korea, they are pretty similar to China when addressing extended family. For example, when we want to refer to our mother's brother, you might say samchon, or in Chinese, juju. And for father's older brother, kunapa, or bofu. And for mother's sister, imo, or ima. And for father's sister, gomo, and or gugu. And for our mother's brother's wife, I call him sungmo, and Chinese, juma. And our mother's sister's husband, imobu, or isha.
And this is my experience with forms of addressing people in Vietnamese. If I wanted to address someone who was slightly older than me, I would call them An. This actually means older brother. If this person who was slightly older than me was a female, I would call them Jay, which means older sister. Now, for people who are around the age of my parents, around that age, I would call them Ju if they were male. This actually means paternal uncle or maternal uncle-in-law. If they were female, I would call them Go. This means paternal aunt or miss. Now, to address people who are much, much older than me, the term I would like to go to would be back. This is a generalist term to refer to a paternal elderly person, and I use this term often to address both male and female elders because it is just my autopilot choice of word. But to be more specific, ba would be used to address an elderly woman, while ong would be used to address an elderly man. Now, to address people who are younger than me, I would call them am, which actually means younger sibling, and the other way would be jiao. This is used to address a child. So this was our presentation on forms of address. Thank you for tuning in.